10 most dangerous inmates in the U.S. prison system.
Part 2.
Jake's heart jumped. "Hello," he called out, even though he was alone. "Is someone working on the power?" Silence answered him. Then, slowly, the monitors flickered back to life. But something was wrong. Every Tier 10 camera now showed the same thing. Each inmate was standing. Each inmate was facing the cell door. And all the digital clocks in the corner of the screens read the same time. 8 p.m. Jake's radio, which he had forgotten was even on his belt, crackled to life. "Control, this is Unit C," a guard's voice said, tight with worry. "We're seeing some kind of lock cycle starting on Tier 10. We didn't authorize it. You got anything on your end?" Jake grabbed the radio. "This is Carter in the media room," he said, stumbling over his words. I'm looking at the cameras and there," he stopped mid-sentence. On camera 3, Red Daly slowly lifted his head and stared straight into the lens. On camera 5, Louis Crane adjusted his glasses and smiled. On camera 6, Elias Moore folded his hands like he was about to give a sermon. Jake's voice came out as a whisper. "They're all standing at the doors," he said. "Like they're waiting for something." A faint, distant clank echoed through the building. "Did you hear that?" the guard on the radio asked. Jake nodded, then remembered the guard couldn't see him. "Yes," he said. "What was it?" Another clink. "Closer." "The locks," the guard said. "They're cycling open." "But that's not possible." "Not without." His voice cut off in a burst of static, like someone had torn the words right out of the air. The alarm began to wail. Red light washed over the control room walls, flashing in time with Jake's pounding heart. On the monitors, big red letters flashed. "Security override. Tier X." Jake stared in horror as digital text scrolled under the warning. "Command accepted." Source: Internal. Internal. Someone inside the system. Inside the prison. On camera 1. Inmate number 1. The man Jake had not even met yet, the man at the very top of his most dangerous list, slowly stepped toward the glass of his door. His face was half in shadow, but Jake could see his eyes. Cold.
Clear.
Focused. The man lifted one finger and tapped the glass once. In the speakers, the sound came through as a sharp, echoing tick that made Jake flinch. The cell door behind him began to slide open. Jake's mind screamed at him to run, to call for help, to do something, but his body would not move. He could only watch as the top 10 inmates in the U.S. prison system began to step out of their cells. The control room door clicked behind him. Jake whirled around. The handle began to turn, and the alarm screamed louder, as if the prison itself knew that whatever was on the other side of that door was the start of something no lock could stop. The door handle kept turning.
Slow.
Steady. Like the person on the other side wasn't rushing, because they didn't need to. Jake stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of papers and his half-open camera bag. His heart hammered in his chest so loudly he could hear it over the alarms. The red lights flashed against the walls, pulsing like a heartbeat. He pressed his back to the far corner of the control room, eyes locked on the metal door as it creaked open an inch, then another. A shadow fell across the floor. Not a guard shape. Too tall.
Too still. Too calm.
Jake held his breath, convinced that one of the inmates had already found him. Then the door swung all the way open, but the figure that stepped inside wasn't an inmate. It was Officer Ramirez. His face was pale under the flashing red lights. Sweat ran down his temple. His breathing was fast, as if he had been sprinting through the prison. "Ramirez," Jake gasped. "Thank God, I thought." "Save it," Ramirez snapped, slamming the door shut and twisting the lock hard. The metal echoed in the small room. "Listen to me carefully. Do not open this door for anyone. Not even if they say my name. Understand?" Jake nodded quickly, still trying to calm his shaking hands. "What's happening?" he whispered. Ramirez leaned over the row of monitors, scanning each camera feed with wide, focused eyes. "Tier 10 has gone into full override," Ramirez said. All 10 cell doors opened at exactly 8 p.m. Jake felt his heart drop. "I saw," he said. "I saw all of them standing there, looking at the cameras, like they knew this was coming." Ramirez didn't look back at him. They did, he said quietly. Jake froze. What do you mean they did? He asked. Ramirez gripped the edge of the console so hard his knuckles turned white. These men aren't normal inmates, he said. You think they're just dangerous criminals because of what they did on the outside? Jake nodded slowly because that was exactly what he thought. Wrong, Ramirez said. The reason they were moved to Blackridge isn't because of the crimes you read about. It's because of what they did inside other prisons. The riots, the escapes, the influence they had. Every time we put one of them somewhere, the whole building changed around them. Jake tried to swallow, but his mouth was dry. So you're saying they planned this? Ramirez finally looked him in the eye. I'm saying they've been waiting, he said. Waiting for a night with the right shift schedule. The right guard rotations. The right electrical weak points. The words made Jake feel like the whole day had been nothing but a long setup. But how could they know all that? Jake asked. They're locked up. Somebody's been helping them, Ramirez said. Someone on the inside. Or someone who can get inside the system. Jake felt his stomach twist. Like Louis Crane. The hacker? Ramirez said.
Yeah.
He could break into a city's power grid with a phone from the 90s. Breaking into Blackridge's system? Child's play. Jake looked around the room, suddenly aware of every blinking light, every camera feed, every piece of equipment powered by the prison's outdated electrical network. So, what do we do? Jake asked. Call the warden? Call the police? Call anyone? Ramirez shook his head. Phones are down. Radios too. Something's jamming the signal. Jake stared at him, stunned. The outside world might as well have been on another planet. The screens flickered again. This time, all 10 inmates were visible, walking in a line down the long hallway of Tier 10 like an army marching to war. Their steps were calm, steady, and in sync. Jake stared in disbelief. That doesn't even make sense, he said. They don't trust each other. They're all violent. Some of them hate each other. Ramirez didn't answer. He knew something Jake didn't, and that silence was somehow worse than shouting. Before Jake could ask more, a loud metallic bang shook the control room door. Jake jumped. What was that? He asked, his voice shaking. Ramirez checked his gun. A pointless move, because he already knew it wouldn't help much against 10 men like that. They're testing the doors, he whispered. Seeing which rooms are locked. Seeing where the guards are.
Bang.
Another hit.
Harder this time.
Jake backed against the console, breathing fast. Can that door hold? He asked. That depends, Ramirez said. On what? Jake whispered. Ramirez's eyes stayed fixed on the handle. On which one of them is out there? They both waited, 1 second, 2 seconds, 5, until finally the banging stopped. But Jake didn't feel relieved. He felt watched. The monitors flickered again, and this time the cameras showed something that made Jake's skin crawl. The inmates had split up. Tommy Knox was heading toward the armory. Louis Crane moved toward the network hub, his glasses catching the light as he walked. Others were peeling off into different wings, each with a purpose. Red Daly, though, was different. On camera 12, Marcus Red Daly was walking with slow, calm steps down a corridor Jake recognized. His breath caught in his throat. Ramirez, he said shakily, look. Ramirez's face hardened the moment he saw it. He knows where we are, Ramirez said. Jake shook his head. How could he know? Because, Ramirez said, he's been here before. This whole block used to be part of another prison years ago. Red spent time in it. He knows the blueprint like the back of his hand. Jake felt the fear rise in his chest like a wave. What does he want? He asked. To shut down the cameras, Ramirez said. Then the guards are blind. Jake tried to argue. But why? Ramirez cut him off. Because if he kills the power to the surveillance hub, the rest of the prison will panic. When guards panic, they make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Jake could fill in the rest himself. On the screen, Red Daly stopped walking. He lifted his head and stared straight into the hallway camera. Jake felt the hairs rise on the back of his neck. He's looking at us, Jake whispered. No, Ramirez said. He's looking at you. Jake felt cold all over. Me? Why me? He saw the documentary gear, Ramirez said. Men like Red? They don't just escape. They want to send a message. Red took one slow step forward, as if walking straight toward Jake's fear. Ramirez grabbed Jake by the arm. We're leaving.
Now.
His voice left no room for argument. He dragged Jake toward the emergency maintenance door in the back corner of the room. Jake had barely noticed it before. It just looked like another blank slab of metal. Where does this lead? Jake asked, his voice panicked. Every part of him wanted to stay with the screens, with the information, but another part of him wanted to be anywhere else. Into the old ventilation tunnels, Ramirez said. They're cramped and dark, but they'll keep us ahead of him. If we're lucky. The monitor behind them flickered again. Red Daly was now only feet from the control room door. And he wasn't alone. Two more inmates, Lewis Crane and Tommy Knox, were walking right behind Red. Jake's pulse spiked as he watched the three of them together. It felt like a nightmare team formed just to break the prison apart. The alarms blared louder. The emergency lights flashed faster, painting everything in sharp red and deep shadow. Jake could feel the building shaking slightly with every distant impact and unlocking door. And the last thing he saw on the monitor before Ramirez shoved him through the maintenance door was Red Daly stopping in front of the control room, placing his palm flat against the metal. It was like he was claiming it. Like he was claiming them. The maintenance door slammed shut behind Jake and Ramirez, the sound echoing in the narrow, dusty space. For a moment, all Jake could hear was his own breathing and the muffled screaming of the alarms on the other side. Then the speakers crackled to life with a voice Jake recognized instantly. Red Daly's voice flowed through the prison speakers.
Come.
Gentle. Almost cheerful. Ready or not, he whispered, his words slithering into every corner of the building. Here we come. Jake felt the hairs lift along his arms. The voice sounded close, even though Red was on the other side of the walls. It was as if the whole prison was speaking with him. Jake flinched as another deep blast shook the wall beside him. He could picture it even without seeing it. The control room door buckling, the hinges tearing loose, metal bending under the force of 10 men who had waited years for this moment. Just as Ramirez locked the maintenance side from within, there was a deafening crash from the control room. The sound of metal exploding inward echoed through the tunnels like thunder. Jake imagined the screens, the radios, the place where he had felt almost safe, now open to the most dangerous inmates in the U.S. prison system. Behind that door, they were no longer just images on a monitor. They were loose. And they were in control. The narrow tunnel around them felt even smaller now. Dust shook loose from overhead pipes and floated in the beam of Ramirez's flashlight. Jake pressed one hand against the cold concrete wall to steady himself. The alarms were muffled here, but still present, like a distant storm rolling through the building. Keep moving, Ramirez said quietly. If they get into the side corridors, these tunnels might be the only thing between us and them. Jake nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Every step echoed slightly, making him worry that even their footsteps were too loud. Somewhere above, he heard running, shouting, and the metallic slam of more doors opening or closing. The prison was no longer a building. It felt like a trap waking up around them. Jake glanced back over his shoulder, even though the tunnel behind them was dark and empty. He couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't just up ahead. It was everywhere. The words Red had spoken over the speakers replayed in his mind. Ready or not, here we come. They weren't just after guards. They weren't just after freedom. They were after control, and Jake had something they wanted, a story, a camera, a way for the whole world to watch. As he and Ramirez moved deeper into the tunnels, the red emergency glow from distant vents painted faint lines along the walls. The noise of the prison seemed to follow them, crawling through pipes and grates. Jake realized with a cold, heavy feeling that he was no longer just documenting the top 10 most dangerous inmates in the U.S. prison system. He was trapped inside their story now, and it was only just beginning.